Maya Chen stood in the airport terminal, watching as the flight crew that had humiliated her just hours ago now frantically explained themselves to airline executives. Their faces drained of color when they realized who she really was. Not just any passenger they could dismiss because of her Asian features, but the new majority owner of Transatlantic Airways. The flight attendant who had sneered, "Economy passengers should know their place," dropped her company badge as Maya calmly announced, "Effective immediately, you're all terminated." How could this crew have known their racist behavior would cost them not just their jobs, but their entire careers? Before we dive into this shocking story of justice served at 30,000 feet, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. If you believe in standing up against discrimination in all its forms, hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on more powerful stories of people fighting back against injustice. Maya Chen hadn't always been the powerful CEO capable of firing an entire flight crew on the spot. Just 10 years ago, she was a young software engineer with nothing but a brilliant idea and unshakable determination. Born to immigrant parents, who ran a small grocery store in San Francisco's Chinatown, Maya learned early on that she would have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Her parents had instilled in her a resilience that would become her greatest asset in the cutthroat world of tech startups. At 37, Maya had built MindLink Technologies from a garage operation into a multi-billion-dollar AI company revolutionizing how businesses processed data. Her latest triumph had been acquiring a controlling stake in Transatlantic Airways, a legacy carrier with a storied history, and, as she would soon discover, a deeply problematic company culture. The acquisition had been strategic. After experiencing discrimination on multiple transatlantic flights, Maya had quietly begun purchasing shares. "If they won't respect us as passengers, perhaps they'll respect us as owners," she had told her executive team. The board of directors had no idea that their new majority shareholder planned to experience their service firsthand before making her presence known. Today's flight from San Francisco to New York was meant to be her undercover assessment. Maya had deliberately dressed down in jeans, a simple blouse, and minimal makeup. Her Louis Vuitton luggage was the only hint of her wealth, and even that was understated. She'd booked her ticket under her legal Chinese name, not the Americanized Maya she used professionally, ensuring no one would make the connection. As she settled into her first-class seat, Maya observed the cabin crew's interactions with passengers. Most were treated with professional courtesy, with warm smiles and attentive service. That is, until an elderly Asian couple boarded, struggling slightly with the overhead compartments. "They should really learn English before traveling," Maya overheard a flight attendant whisper to another. "It makes everything so much harder for everyone." "I know," the other replied with an eye roll. "First class is getting so accessible these days. Remember when it was just business people who knew how things worked?" Maya felt her chest tighten, a familiar sensation whenever she witnessed such casual racism. She'd experienced it countless times. The venture capitalist who asked to speak to the actual founder when she pitched her company. The executive who complimented her surprisingly good English. The countless times she was mistaken for an assistant rather than the CEO. She took a deep breath and made a note in her phone. This flight would give her all the information she needed about Transatlantic's true colors. Maya wasn't just testing their service. She was assessing whether the company she'd invested in reflected the values she demanded. Little did the crew know, their every interaction was being evaluated by the woman who now controlled their company's future. As the final passengers boarded, Maya witnessed the first truly egregious incident. The elderly couple had been assigned separate seats despite their reservation. When they tried to explain their situation, the flight attendant spoke loudly and slowly, as if volume could overcome a language barrier, before dismissing them with a flick of her hand. "This stops now," Maya thought, strengthening her resolve. Every person deserves respect, regardless of who they are or what language they speak. What she couldn't have anticipated was just how personal this mission was about to become. The moment Maya Chen fastened her seatbelt in seat 2A, she could feel the flight attendant's eyes sweeping over her with barely concealed suspicion. Blake Reynolds, according to his name tag, had greeted the white businessman across the aisle with a warm, "Welcome aboard, sir," but had merely nodded curtly in Maya's direction. As the pre-flight champagne service began, Blake smoothly placed crystal flutes on the tray tables of other first-class passengers. When he reached Maya, he hesitated. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" he asked, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Maya smiled politely. "Yes, seat 2A. I'm exactly where I should be." She showed him her boarding pass, which he scrutinized longer than necessary, before reluctantly pouring her champagne. The drink was noticeably less full than others around her. Once they were airborne and meal service began, the real trouble started. Maya had pre-ordered a vegetarian meal when booking her ticket, a standard option for any airline. "I believe I ordered the vegetarian meal," Maya said when Blake placed a standard meat entree before her. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I don't have any record of that. This is what's available." "I have the confirmation email," Maya replied, pulling out her phone to show him the clearly marked vegetarian meal request that had been confirmed by the airline. Blake barely glanced at it. "There must have been a system error. We can't accommodate special requests that weren't properly recorded." "But it was properly recorded," Maya insisted calmly. "Is there perhaps another vegetarian option available?" Blake's voice rose slightly. "Ma'am, you must be in the wrong seat. These special meals are reserved for confirmed first-class passengers." Heads turned. Maya felt her cheeks warming, not from embarrassment but from the controlled anger she'd learned to master throughout her career. "I am a confirmed first-class passenger," she stated, showing her boarding pass again. "This is the third time I've had to prove it." Blake leaned in, whispering to another flight attendant just loudly enough for Maya to hear. "Probably used points to upgrade and doesn't know how it works." The other flight attendant, a woman whose tag read Tiffany Ward, glanced at Maya with a smirk. "Those economy passengers never understand our service standards." For the third time in 40 minutes, Blake approached Maya asking to see her boarding pass again, while no other passenger in first class had been checked even once. "Has something like this ever happened to you? Have you ever been treated differently because of how you look?" Type number 1 in the comments if you believe everyone deserves equal respect regardless of their appearance. Give this video a thumbs up if you've ever witnessed discrimination and wished you could do something about it. What would you do if you were in Maya's position? Would you speak up immediately or gather evidence like she did? Subscribe to our channel for more stories of people standing up against injustice in unexpected ways. But here's the real question. What could possibly drive professional airline staff to treat a paying first-class passenger this way? And what will Maya do as the discriminatory treatment escalates to levels no passenger should ever experience? The meal service continued, with Maya Chen becoming increasingly aware that she was being deliberately targeted. While every other passenger in first class had already received their entrees, Maya's table remained empty. Blake Reynolds served, her last, dropping a cold plate in front of her without a word nearly 15 minutes after serving everyone else. "Excuse me," Maya said, maintaining her composure. "This food is cold." Blake barely looked at her. "We're not a microwave service, ma'am. Perhaps next time you should order a regular meal like everyone else." Throughout the meal, Maya noticed her water glass was never refilled, though Blake was attentive to every other passenger's needs. When she pressed the call button to request a drink, Blake took nearly 10 minutes to respond, then forgot to bring her sparkling water. This happened not once, but 3 times. Meanwhile, the white male passenger across the aisle received exceptional service. Blake checked on him repeatedly, offering extra bread, bringing unprompted refills, and engaging in friendly conversation. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. Maya discreetly documented everything on her phone, typing notes that would later become evidence. As a CEO who had built a company culture focused on respect and inclusion, she recognized the systematic discrimination unfolding before her. This wasn't just poor service, it was targeted harassment based on her race. When the cabin lights dimmed and passengers prepared to rest, Maya noticed others being offered plush blankets and pillows. When she requested one, Blake's response cut through the quiet cabin. "I'm sorry, those amenities are reserved for regular, first-class customers," he said with barely concealed disdain. Maya raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly is a regular first-class customer?" Blake fumbled, realizing he'd crossed a line. I just mean, well, people who look a certain way? Maya finished for him, her voice steady. Blake's face hardened. I'm simply following company policy about limited amenities. The businessman across the aisle, who had been given a blanket without even asking, looked uncomfortable. He glanced between Maya and Blake but said nothing. Tiffany Ward approached, inserting herself into the situation. Is there a problem here? Ms. Chen believes she's entitled to premium amenities, Blake explained with a pointed look. I believe I'm entitled to the same service as every other first-class passenger, Maya corrected. Tiffany's smile was practiced but cold. Some passengers have status with our airline that earns them additional benefits. Status that you can determine just by looking at them? Maya asked. The two flight attendants exchanged glances. Other passengers were now openly watching the exchange. When Maya's meal tray was finally collected, her dessert never arrived, though everyone else received theirs. When she inquired, Blake returned with a single packaged cookie, the kind served in economy. You should be grateful to get anything at all, he muttered as he dropped it on her tray. Maya stared at the cookie, then at Blake's retreating back. In all her years facing discrimination in the tech industry, she'd learned when to speak up and when to gather ammunition. Right now, she was doing both, and the flight crew had no idea who they were really dealing with. 3 hours into the flight, Maya Chen had documented 17 distinct instances of discriminatory treatment. The final straw came when she overheard Blake and Tiffany laughing in the galley, with Blake doing an exaggerated Asian accent while mimicking her earlier requests. Maya had endured enough humiliation for one flight. She pressed her call button. When Blake eventually responded, Maya kept her voice controlled and professional. I'd like to speak with the lead flight attendant, please. Blake's expression tightened. I can handle any concerns you have. I prefer to speak with your supervisor, Maya insisted. 10 minutes later, a man with silver-streaked hair and a name tag reading Marcus Doyle, lead flight attendant, approached her seat. I understand you have some concerns about our service, he said, his tone suggesting this was an inconvenience rather than his job. Maya explained clearly and concisely how she had been treated differently from other first-class passengers, providing specific examples and timestamps from her notes. Marcus glanced at Blake, who hovered nearby, then back to Maya. Ms. Chen, is it? I've been supervising this cabin throughout the flight and haven't observed any differential treatment. Perhaps you're misinterpreting cultural differences in service. Cultural differences, Maya repeated. Would these cultural differences explain why I'm the only passenger who was repeatedly asked to verify my seat assignment? Or why I was served last, with cold food, while being denied the amenities freely given to others? Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. I think you're making assumptions about why certain service decisions were made. Our crew is highly trained in customer service. By now, other passengers were watching. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, but most studiously avoided eye contact with Maya. I'd like the names and employee IDs of the flight attendants who have been serving this cabin, Maya requested. We don't provide that information to passengers, Marcus replied immediately. It's standard practice for accountability, Maya countered. Your own airline policy states that employees must provide identification when specifically requested by a passenger. Marcus's facade of professionalism began to crack. Ma'am, I think you're causing a scene. This is disturbing other passengers, who are trying to enjoy their flight. Maya looked around. She hadn't raised her voice once, yet Marcus was painting her as the disruption. It was a tactic she recognized, making the victim appear to be the aggressor. In the galley, Blake, Tiffany, and a third flight attendant huddled together, occasionally glancing at Maya and laughing. When they realized she was watching, they quickly dispersed, but the message was clear. They were mocking her. I'll be filing a formal complaint about this treatment, Maya informed Marcus. His expression darkened. That's your right. But I should warn you that if you continue to disturb this flight, I'll have no choice but to have security meet the plane when we land. Maya's eyebrows rose. Are you threatening me for calmly reporting discriminatory treatment? I'm informing you of consequences for disruptive behavior, Marcus corrected. You need to calm down and accept the service you're given. The injustice of the situation was breathtaking. Maya had built a billion-dollar company by standing her ground in rooms full of men who underestimated her. She wasn't about to be intimidated by a flight attendant who had no idea who she really was. What Marcus didn't realize was that his threats were digging transatlantic airways into an even deeper hole, one that would soon swallow the careers of everyone involved. The confrontation with Marcus had drawn unwanted attention to Maya. While most passengers averted their eyes, one man seated across the aisle watched the exchange with increasing concern. He was in his 60s, distinguished-looking with silver hair and wearing a perfectly tailored suit. As Marcus walked away, the man leaned toward Maya. "Excuse me," he said in a low voice. "I couldn't help overhearing. What they're doing to you is completely unacceptable." Maya gave him a measured look, unsure if this was genuine concern or another form of condescension. "Richard Thornton," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I've been watching how they've treated you compared to everyone else, including myself. It's blatant discrimination." Maya shook his hand. "Maya Chen, thank you for noticing. Most people prefer to look away." "I spent 30 years as a federal judge," Richard explained. "I've seen enough discrimination cases to recognize it when it's happening right in front of me." Blake approached with a fresh drink for Richard, pointedly ignoring Maya. "Is everything all right, sir? Can I get you anything else?" "Actually," Richard said firmly, "I'm concerned about how my fellow passenger has been treated. I've observed clear disparities in service that appear to be racially motivated." Blake's smile faltered. "Sir, I can assure you all our passengers receive the same high-quality service." "Then perhaps you can explain why Ms. Chen has been asked to verify her seat assignment multiple times while no one else has, or why she alone was denied a proper meal and blanket." Blake's face reddened. "Sir, I'm happy to bring you another drink or perhaps some extra snacks." "What I'd like," Richard said evenly, "is for you to provide Ms. Chen with the same level of service you've given me, starting with a proper meal and a blanket." Blake retreated to the galley, whispered urgently to Tiffany and Marcus. Moments later, he returned with a voucher. "We'd like to offer you complimentary miles for your next journey with us," he said to Richard, completely ignoring Maya. Richard pushed the voucher back. "I'm not the one who's been mistreated." "Sir, we value your business," Blake insisted. "And apparently not mine," Maya observed. Blake's smile became strained. "Ms. Chen, I'll see what I can find for you in the galley." As Blake walked away, Richard turned to Maya. "I'm happy to be a witness if you decide to file a complaint. What they're doing is textbook discrimination." "I appreciate that more than you know," Maya replied, wondering if she should reveal who she really was. Before she could decide, the cockpit door opened. A tall man in a captain's uniform strode down the aisle, his face set in stern lines. His name tag read, Captain Gerald Weber. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, addressing Richard rather than Maya. Richard explained the situation succinctly, highlighting the discriminatory treatment Maya had received. Captain Weber listened, occasionally glancing at Maya with barely concealed skepticism. "I trust my crew," Weber finally said. "They're highly trained professionals. If there have been service discrepancies, I'm sure there are reasonable explanations." "With all due respect, Captain," Maya interjected, "what possible explanation could there be for checking my boarding pass 3 times when no one else's was checked at all?" The captain's expression hardened. "Ms. Chen, is it? My primary responsibility is the safety of this aircraft and everyone on it. If any passenger becomes disruptive or creates a hostile environment for my crew, I have the authority to divert this flight and have that passenger removed." Richard straightened in his seat. "Captain, are you suggesting that a passenger calmly reporting discriminatory treatment is being disruptive?" "I'm simply clarifying the consequences of interfering with my crew's ability to perform their duties," Weber replied coldly. "This is your only warning." As the captain returned to the cockpit, Maya and Richard exchanged looks of disbelief. Not only was the flight crew discriminating against her, but the captain was now threatening her for speaking up. Have you ever witnessed someone standing up against injustice like Richard did for Maya? Comment number 1 if you believe more people should intervene when they see discrimination happening. Hit the like button if you would have the courage to speak up in a similar situation. What would you do if you were in Maya's position now? Would you stay quiet until landing, or would you continue to document the discrimination? Subscribe to our channel for more stories about people who refuse to be silenced when facing injustice. But here's the burning question. With the entire crew turning against her, and even the captain threatening to have her removed from the flight, how could Maya possibly turn this situation around? And why would a retired federal judge become her unexpected ally in this battle against discrimination? After Captain Weber's threat, Maya knew she needed to change tactics. The flight crew believed they had all the power, that she was just another passenger they could bully with impunity. It was time to shift the dynamic, but strategically. Maya quietly removed her phone from her purse. She had been recording audio since the first discriminatory incident, but now she needed to ensure the evidence was preserved. "What are you doing?" Blake demanded, suddenly appearing beside her seat. "Phone use is restricted during flight." "I'm putting it on airplane mode," Maya replied calmly, though she had already sent several messages to her executive team with timestamps and details of the discrimination. "Cell phones must be completely powered off if they're causing a disturbance," Blake insisted, reaching toward her device. "That's not FAA policy," Richard interjected. "Phones in airplane mode are perfectly acceptable." "It's Transatlantic Airways policy," Blake countered. "No, it isn't," Richard said. "I fly this airline weekly and have the current policy memorized. What you're suggesting would constitute unauthorized seizure of personal property." Blake's confidence wavered. "We have the right to confiscate items that pose a security risk." "My phone isn't a security risk," Maya pointed out, "and I believe you know that." "Hand over your phone or I'll have the captain divert the flight," Blake hissed, dropping all pretense of customer service. Maya knew her rights but also understood the importance of appearing to comply. She turned off the recording, but not before saving it to her secure cloud storage. She then handed Blake her phone with a deliberate show of reluctance. "This is completely inappropriate," she said, loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "I'd like this noted in the flight record." Blake took her phone with a triumphant smirk, believing he had cut off her ability to document their behavior. What he didn't know was that Maya had already texted her chief of staff with instructions to contact Transatlantic's corporate headquarters. For the next hour, Maya sat quietly. The crew interpreted her silence as defeat, exchanging satisfied glances whenever they passed her seat. Richard occasionally engaged her in conversation, sharing stories from his time on the federal bench, handling discrimination cases. "The most important thing," he advised quietly, "is documentation and witnesses. They think they've won by taking your phone, but I've seen everything." Maya nodded gratefully. What the crew didn't realize was that while she appeared defeated, she was actually executing a carefully considered plan. Being underestimated was a position Maya had used to her advantage throughout her career. As the flight entered its final hour, Maya's watch vibrated with an incoming message. Blake had confiscated her phone, but had forgotten about her smartwatch. The message was from her executive team. "Emergency protocols initiated. Board members and legal team notified. Standing by at JFK." For the first time since the flight began, Maya allowed herself a small smile. The crew had no idea what awaited them on landing. They believed they were punishing an ordinary passenger who had dared to question their authority. Their misplaced confidence would soon crumble around them. Captain Weber's voice came over the intercom announcing their initial descent into New York. Blake returned to collect trash, deliberately bypassing Maya's seat. Tiffany walked past with fresh hot towels for first-class passengers, placing one on Richard's tray and ignoring Maya completely. "Excuse me," Maya called after her. "Could I have a hot towel as well?" Tiffany turned with exaggerated surprise. "Oh, I'm so sorry. We seem to have run out. Economy passengers will receive sanitizing wipes shortly." Several nearby passengers frowned at this obvious lie, as Tiffany still held several towels on her tray. Richard opened his mouth to object, but Maya subtly shook her head. The time for confrontation had passed. Now she was gathering the final pieces of evidence before landing. As the plane began its descent, Maya's watch vibrated again. Another message from her team. All set. Executive committee and legal standing by at gate. Security has been briefed. The trap was set. All she had to do now was land. The plane touched down at JFK International with a gentle bump, taxiing toward the terminal as passengers began gathering their belongings. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York. Local time is 4:17 p.m. with clear skies and 72 degrees. Please remain seated until we reach the gate and the fasten seatbelt sign is turned off. After the standard announcements, Captain Weber added something unusual. We'd also like to ask passenger Maya Chen in seat 2A to remain seated after other passengers have deplaned. Airport security will be assisting with a situation that developed during our flight. Heads turned toward Maya, some with curiosity, others with judgment. Blake and Tiffany exchanged smug glances, clearly believing they had won. Marcus stood by the cockpit door, arms crossed, watching Maya with barely concealed satisfaction. "This is outrageous," Richard murmured. "They're trying to humiliate you publicly now." "It's all right," Maya assured him calmly. "Everything is proceeding exactly as expected." When the plane reached the gate and the seatbelt sign dinged off, first-class passengers began to file out. Richard hesitated. "I should stay with you," he offered. "As a witness." Maya nodded. "I'd appreciate that, Your Honor." As other passengers deplaned, Blake approached Maya's seat. "Security will be escorting you momentarily. I suggest you gather your belongings." "Thank you for your concern," Maya replied with unexpected pleasantness that seemed to unnerve Blake more than anger would have. When the last regular passenger had left, 2 uniformed airport security officers boarded the plane. The flight crew watched with triumphant expressions as the officers made their way to Maya's seat. Captain Weber had emerged from the cockpit, standing with his crew as if to present a united front against a troublesome passenger. "Ms. Chen?" one of the officers asked. "Yes, that's me," Maya confirmed, standing. The crew's expressions shifted to confusion when, instead of taking an aggressive stance, the officer spoke respectfully. "Ma'am, we've been asked to escort you from the aircraft. Would you and your companion please follow us?" "Of course," Maya agreed, gathering her belongings. Blake stepped forward. "Officers, this passenger has been disruptive throughout the flight, harassing our crew and—" The security officer cut him off with a raised hand. "Sir, we have our instructions. Please step aside." As Maya and Richard were escorted toward the exit, the crew's confusion was palpable. This wasn't the confrontational removal they had expected. There were no demands for identification, no threats of consequences, no handcuffs or loud commands. Instead, Maya was being treated with deference. Captain Weber frowned. "Officers, I'd like to file an incident report about this passenger's behavior." "You'll have that opportunity, sir," the second officer replied without stopping. "Please, gather your crew and remain on board until instructed otherwise." As Maya reached the aircraft door, she turned back to see the bewildered faces of the crew who thought they had won. Their expressions changed to shock when they glimpsed what waited outside. A line of serious-looking executives in business attire, Transatlantic Airways board members instantly recognizable from company publications, and the airline's chief legal counsel. The color drained from Marcus's face. Tiffany grabbed Blake's arm for support. Captain Weber's confident posture crumbled as understanding began to dawn. "What's happening?" Blake whispered, his voice no longer carrying its earlier authority. Maya stepped off the aircraft without answering, leaving the crew to stew in mounting dread as they realized something had gone terribly wrong with their plan to punish an unruly passenger. Maya Chen stepped onto the jet bridge where Transatlantic Airways' highest-ranking executives waited. The airline's chief operating officer, Elizabeth Warren, stepped forward immediately. "Ms. Chen, On behalf of Transatlantic Airways, I want to personally apologize for whatever occurred on this flight, she said, loud enough for the crew still standing in the doorway to hear. Ms. Chen? Captain Weber repeated, his face contorted in confusion. You mean... Allow me to properly introduce myself, Maya said, turning to face the crew. I'm Maya Chen, CEO of MindLink Technologies, and, as of 2 weeks ago, the majority shareholder of Transatlantic Airways. The effect of her words was immediate and devastating. Blake's jaw dropped open. Tiffany clutched the doorframe for support. Marcus looked as though he might be sick. Captain Weber stood frozen, the blood draining from his face. That's impossible, Blake stammered. We would have been notified of any ownership changes. The acquisition was completed quietly, Elizabeth explained, her tone icy. Ms. Chen requested that her first assessment of our service be conducted anonymously, a standard practice when new leadership takes over. Maya gestured to Richard. Allow me to introduce the Honorable Richard Thornton, former federal judge and current head of my company's ethics committee. Judge Thornton was kind enough to serve as an independent witness to today's events. Richard nodded grimly. I've documented numerous instances of discriminatory treatment, which I'd be happy to detail for the board. By now, the remaining color had drained from the crew's faces. The realization that they had spent the past 5 hours discriminating against their new boss, and that she had documented everything, was sinking in. This must be some mistake, Captain Weber tried, his voice lacking conviction. There's no mistake, Captain, Maya replied calmly. When I acquired controlling interest in Transatlantic, I was aware of persistent complaints about discriminatory treatment of minority passengers. Rather than simply accept the reports, I decided to experience your service firsthand. She turned to the gathered executives. What I didn't anticipate was how blatant the discrimination would be, or that it would be directed at me personally. Maya hadn't originally planned to make her first assessment so public, but the crew's behavior had forced her hand. For years, minority passengers had filed complaints about transatlantic service, only to have them buried by a management structure that protected problematic employees. Maya had experienced similar treatment on previous flights, watching as Asian, Black, and Middle Eastern passengers were scrutinized, questioned, and provided inferior service compared to their white counterparts. Her acquisition of the airline hadn't been merely a business decision, it was personal. After building MindLink Technologies into a company known for its inclusive culture, Maya had decided to transform another industry from within. We've been tracking complaints about discriminatory treatment for months, Maya explained to the executives while the crew listened in horror. Particular names kept appearing in these reports, including everyone serving first class on today's flight. She turned to Judge Thornton. Would you say what you witnessed today constitutes discrimination? Without question, Richard confirmed. As someone who adjudicated discrimination cases for decades, the behavior I observed was textbook racial discrimination, with aggravating factors of retaliation when Ms. Chen attempted to report it. Blake finally found his voice. Ms. Chen, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We had no idea who you were. That's precisely the point, Mr. Reynolds, Maya replied. You shouldn't treat any passenger differently based on their race, regardless of who they are. The fact that you're only concerned now that you know my position makes your discrimination even more apparent. She turned to the airline executives. I have recorded evidence of multiple discriminatory incidents. Additionally, the first-class cabin is equipped with cameras that have captured the entire flight. I want that footage secured immediately before it mysteriously disappears. The airline's legal counsel, a stern-looking woman with a tablet, nodded. We'll secure it right away, Ms. Chen. Blake stepped forward desperately. Ms. Chen, please, if you'll allow me to explain. I think you've explained enough through your actions today, Maya interrupted. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Right now. Here, in the terminal. Have you ever fantasized about having the power to confront those who discriminated against you? Comment number 1 if you've ever wished you could reveal your true position to someone who underestimated you. Hit that like button if you believe more companies need leadership willing to experience their services firsthand. Did you suspect Maya was the owner all along, or were you surprised by the revelation? Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss the conclusion of this incredible story of justice served at 30,000 feet. But the burning question remains. Now that Maya has revealed her identity and the crew realizes the grave mistake they've made, what consequences will they face? And with powerful connections apparently working behind the scenes, could the flight crew somehow escape accountability for their actions? Within minutes, the airport's VIP conference room had been commandeered for Transatlantic Airways' emergency board meeting. The executives sat on one side of the long table, visibly uncomfortable. The flight crew huddled together on the opposite side, still in uniform, looking shell-shocked. Maya Chen and Judge Thornton occupied the head of the table, flanked by Maya's legal team. "Let's be clear about what happened today," Maya began without preamble. "I was repeatedly discriminated against by multiple crew members. I was denied standard first-class services. I was threatened with removal from the aircraft for calmly reporting this treatment. And ultimately, the captain attempted to have me detained by airport security." Captain Weber cleared his throat. "Ms. Chen, if I may." "You'll have your chance to speak, Captain." Maya cut him off. "Right now, I'm outlining the facts." Using her recovered phone, Maya projected a timeline of events onto the room's display screen. Each incident was meticulously documented with timestamps and descriptions. The airline executives winced as they read the list. "Your Honor," Maya addressed Richard, "would you confirm that this accurately represents what you witnessed?" "It does," Richard affirmed. "And I'd add that in 30 years on the federal bench, I've rarely seen such blatant discriminatory behavior in a commercial setting." Blake leaned forward, desperation evident in his voice. "Ms. Chen, there's been a misunderstanding. We treat all passengers with the same level of service." "Really?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's not what the data shows." She nodded to her assistant, who displayed a new set of statistics on the screen. "These are passenger complaint patterns for Transatlantic over the past year, broken down by passenger demographics. Notice anything?" The room fell silent as they absorbed the numbers. Complaints from Asian, Black, and Middle Eastern passengers were 5 times higher than those from white passengers, with remarkably similar descriptions of treatment. "This isn't an isolated incident," Maya continued. "It's systemic. And the most disturbing part? Many of these complaints name the same flight attendants who served me today." Blake's face reddened. "Those complaints were investigated and dismissed." "Yes," Maya agreed. "By your current VP of Customer Experience, who appears to have buried them systematically." She turned to the executives. "Victor Hughes has some explaining to do about why these patterns were ignored." A balding executive at the far end of the table shifted uncomfortably. Maya fixed him with a steady gaze, and he seemed to shrink in his seat. "But let's return to today's events," Maya continued. "While Mr. Reynolds' history of complaints is concerning, what happened on this flight goes beyond poor customer service." She nodded again to her assistant, who tapped a few keys. The room's speakers crackled to life, and Blake's voice filled the room, performing a mocking Asian accent while imitating Maya's requests. Tiffany's laughter followed, along with her clear comment. "These people should stay in economy where they belong." The color drained from both flight attendants' faces as their own words condemned them. Marcus stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "And now," Maya said quietly, "let's review the video evidence." The screen displayed high-definition footage from the first-class cabin cameras, showing Blake repeatedly checking Maya's boarding pass, Tiffany deliberately skipping Maya during service, and Marcus threatening her after she calmly reported the discrimination. When the video concluded with Captain Weber's threat to divert the aircraft, the room was deathly silent. Blake attempted damage control. "Ms. Chen, I think you may have misinterpreted cultural differences in our service style. At Transatlantic, we—" "Stop," Maya said firmly. "Do not insult everyone in this room by suggesting that racism is a cultural difference. The evidence speaks for itself." Tiffany began to cry, whether from genuine remorse or fear for her job was unclear. Marcus stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Captain Weber looked utterly defeated. Maya turned to the executives. As majority shareholder, I have the authority to make immediate personnel changes. Effective immediately, Blake Reynolds, Tiffany, Ward, Marcus Doyle, and Captain Gerald Weber are terminated from Transatlantic Airways. The crew looked stunned, despite having surely anticipated this outcome. Additionally, Maya continued, Victor Hughes is suspended pending an investigation into his handling of discrimination complaints. Elizabeth Warren will serve as interim VP of Customer Experience alongside her COO duties. She stood, her expression resolute. This is just the beginning of Transatlantic's transformation. I didn't acquire this airline simply as a business investment. I did it to change a culture that has tolerated discrimination for far too long. As the fired crew members sat in shocked silence, Maya had delivered the first phase of justice, but the consequences of their actions were only beginning to unfold. Within hours of the terminations, the story had spiraled beyond Transatlantic's control. Someone had leaked details to the press, and camera crews now gathered outside the airport. Inside, the situation was growing increasingly complex. Ms. Chen, Elizabeth Warren approached with concern etched on her face. Kevin Donovan from the Flight Attendants Union is here. He's threatening a company-wide walkout if the terminations aren't reversed. Maya nodded calmly. Show him in. Kevin Donovan strode into the conference room with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. Ms. Chen, I'll be direct. You cannot fire crew members without following proper union grievance procedures. These terminations must be reversed immediately, or we'll have no choice but to initiate a work stoppage. Mr. Donovan, Maya replied evenly. I understand your concern for proper procedure. However, the evidence of discriminatory behavior is irrefutable and documented through multiple sources. This isn't a performance issue. It's misconduct that violates federal law. That's for an arbitration panel to decide, Donovan insisted. Not a unilateral decision by management, regardless of ownership stake. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with an urgent message. She glanced at the screen and frowned. Interesting timing, she murmured, then looked up at Elizabeth. Transatlantic stock has dropped 8% in after-hours trading. Someone's trying to create a panic. As if on cue, Blake Reynolds burst back into the conference room, looking considerably more confident than when he'd left. Ms. Chen, you might want to reconsider your position, he said, holding up his phone. My uncle would like a word with you. Maya raised an eyebrow. Your uncle? Senator James Reynolds, Blake replied with unmistakable smugness. Ranking member of the Transportation Committee. The room fell silent as Blake put his phone on. Speaker. Ms. Chen, the authoritative voice boomed from the device. James Reynolds here. I understand you've taken some drastic actions against my nephew and his colleagues today. Senator, Maya acknowledged. Your nephew was terminated for documented discriminatory behavior against a passenger who happened to be me. Yes, I've heard your version, the senator replied dismissively. But I'm concerned about foreign influences making rash decisions that affect American jobs and our transportation infrastructure. The committee will be looking very closely at this situation. The thinly veiled threat hung in the air. Senator, Reynolds wasn't subtle about leveraging his political power to pressure Maya into reversing her decision. I appreciate your concern, Senator, Maya replied coolly. My company's legal team will be happy to provide all evidence of discrimination to your committee. I'm sure as a public servant you're equally concerned about ensuring American companies comply with civil rights laws. The senator's tone hardened. Ms. Chen, perhaps we should discuss this privately. There are national security considerations regarding foreign control of American airlines that my committee might need to review. Maya's eyes narrowed at the xenophobic implication. Though she was an American citizen born in California, the senator was deliberately otherizing her based on her Chinese heritage. I look forward to any hearings your committee wishes to hold, Senator, she replied firmly. Transparency is something I value deeply. After the call ended, Blake looked triumphant. My uncle isn't someone you want as an enemy, Ms. Chen. He can make things very difficult for Transatlantic. Before Maya could respond, Elizabeth rushed back in. Ms. Chen, we have another situation. Senator Reynolds just gave a statement to the press suggesting you're an unstable foreign influence in American transportation. The stock is now down 12%. The coordinated counterattack was now clear. Blake had called his powerful uncle, who was using political pressure and xenophobic rhetoric to tank the airline's stock and force Maya to back down. As if to emphasize the point, Maya's phone buzzed with urgent messages from concerned board members, questioning whether her actions were worth the potential financial damage to the company. Maya surveyed the room. The union representative ready to shut down the airline, the fired employee with powerful political connections, executives worried about stock prices, and media spinning a narrative that painted her as a foreign threat rather than a business leader fighting discrimination. The counterattack was sophisticated and hitting from multiple angles. But they had underestimated who they were dealing with. Maya Chen hadn't built a tech empire by backing down from bullies, no matter how powerful they might be. "Elizabeth," she said calmly, "call a press conference. It's time we shared the full story with the public." Transatlantic's largest conference room had been hastily converted into a media center. Cameras from every major network were positioned to capture Maya Chen's response to the growing controversy. Behind the scenes, her team had been working furiously, gathering data and preparing a strategy that would turn the tables on her opponents. As Maya stepped up to the podium, flashbulbs erupted. She waited for the room to quiet before speaking. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began. "Today I want to address the events that occurred on Transatlantic Airways Flight 257 from San Francisco to New York, and the broader implications for our company and industry." Maya spoke clearly and confidently, outlining the discriminatory treatment she had experienced. She didn't rely solely on her own testimony, but played selected clips from the cabin security footage, which had been quickly edited to protect other passengers' privacy while clearly showing the flight crew's behavior. "What happened to me today isn't an isolated incident," Maya continued. "It represents a pattern of behavior that many passengers have experienced, but few have had the platform to address." With a nod to her assistant, the screen behind her displayed testimonials from dozens of transatlantic passengers who had reported similar discriminatory treatment over the past year. "These voices have been systematically ignored," Maya explained. "Complaints buried, evidence lost, and passengers dismissed. Today that changes." She introduced Judge Richard Thornton, who provided his expert legal assessment of the discrimination he had witnessed firsthand. "In my professional opinion," Richard stated, "the behavior exhibited by the flight crew constituted clear violations of federal anti-discrimination laws. Had this case come before my court during my tenure as a federal judge, I would have found substantial grounds for both civil penalties and remedial action." As Richard stepped away from the microphone, Maya revealed her next move. "Transatlantic Airways is embarking on a comprehensive transformation," she announced. "Today, I'm launching our Respect in the Skies initiative, a complete overhaul of our training, reporting, and accountability systems." She detailed the multi-million-dollar program that would establish new industry standards for inclusive customer service, transparent complaint resolution, and zero tolerance for discrimination. "Additionally," Maya continued, "I can now reveal that Flight 257 wasn't my first assessment flight. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had 20 undercover evaluators on transatlantic flights, documenting service quality and potential discrimination." The room buzzed with surprise. Maya had been playing a much longer game than anyone realized. "The data we've gathered will inform our transformation process," she explained. "And yes, it has identified other employees whose behavior requires immediate attention." A reporter raised her hand. "Ms. Chen, how do you respond to Senator Reynolds' claims that you're a foreign influence threatening American jobs?" Maya smiled. "I was born in San Francisco to parents who immigrated here legally in the 1970s. I built my company in America, employ thousands of Americans, and pay American taxes. The senator's xenophobic implications say more about him than about me." She paused, then delivered the bombshell her team had prepared. "What's particularly interesting about Senator Reynolds' sudden concern is his voting record on anti-discrimination legislation." The screen behind her displayed the senator's consistent votes against strengthening civil rights protections, including transportation-specific provisions that would have required airlines to report discrimination complaints. Even more concerning, Maya continued as the display changed, are these documents showing Senator Reynolds received substantial campaign contributions from Transatlantic's previous management, coinciding with his efforts to block FAA regulations that would have mandated anti-discrimination training for flight crews. The room erupted as reporters realized the story had just become much bigger than one flight crew's behavior. Maya had exposed a potential corruption scandal involving a sitting U.S. senator. As the press conference continued, Transatlantic's stock began to recover. Investors recognized that Maya's approach wasn't just morally right, it was strategically sound. By establishing herself as a leader committed to addressing systemic problems, she was positioning the airline for long-term success rather than short-term damage control. By the time Maya concluded her remarks, she had completely reframed the I narrative. No longer was she on the defensive against political pressure. Instead, she had exposed the connections between discriminatory practices and political protection, casting herself as a reformer fighting entrenched corruption. The counterattack had failed spectacularly, and Maya Chen had emerged stronger than before. 6 months after the infamous Flight 257, Maya Chen stood in Transatlantic Airways' newly renovated training center, addressing the largest class of new flight attendants in the company's history. The wall behind her displayed the airline's new slogan, "The sky belongs to everyone." "Welcome to the new Transatlantic Airways," Maya began. "Each of you has been selected not just for your service skills, but for your demonstrated commitment to treating every passenger with equal respect and dignity." The training center represented just one aspect of the transformation Maya had initiated. The entire corporate culture had been rebuilt from the ground up, with every policy examined through the lens of inclusivity and respect. The changes hadn't come without resistance. Blake Reynolds, Tiffany Ward, Marcus Doyle, and Captain Weber had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, claiming they had been made scapegoats for systemic problems. Their case had been dismissed with prejudice after Judge Richard Thornton, who had joined Transatlantic's newly established ethics board, submitted a detailed affidavit recounting his observations. Maya occasionally saw updates about the former crew members on social media. Blake and Tiffany had eventually found positions with a budget regional carrier, working entry-level ground service jobs for a fraction of their former salaries. Marcus had left the aviation industry entirely. Captain Weber had been unable to find another pilot position after the FAA reviewed his conduct and issued a formal reprimand. The most satisfying outcome, however, had been Senator James Reynolds' failed re-election bid. After Maya's revelations about his connections to Transatlantic's previous management and his pattern of blocking anti-discrimination measures, voters had shown him the door. His defeat was widely viewed as a referendum on the type of casual racism his nephew had displayed on that fateful flight. "Our quarterly customer satisfaction scores are in," Elizabeth Warren announced, joining Maya at the training center. "We're up 32% overall, with our highest gains among minority passengers." Maya nodded, pleased but not surprised. "And the financial results?" "Stock price has doubled since you took over," Elizabeth confirmed. "It turns out treating people with respect is good business." The transformation hadn't been merely cosmetic. Maya had implemented structural changes to ensure accountability at every level. Complaint data was now transparently tracked and published. Anonymous evaluators regularly flew as passengers to assess service quality. Every employee, from baggage handlers to the CEO, underwent comprehensive anti-bias training developed in partnership with civil rights organizations. Richard Thornton had been instrumental in designing the new ethics framework, bringing his judicial experience to bear on creating fair processes for addressing future concerns. "There's something else you should see," Elizabeth said, handing Maya a tablet. "We've been analyzing passenger manifests from competitor airlines, and we've noticed something interesting." Maya studied the data, her eyes widening. "These patterns suggest deliberate placement of discriminatory employees on specific routes, almost as if someone wanted to drive away certain demographics of customers," Elizabeth finished. "We've traced communications between former Transatlantic executives and Vista Airlines' current management team." Maya's mind raced as she connected the dots. The discrimination she'd experienced hadn't been merely the result of individual prejudice. It had been part of a coordinated strategy by a competitor to damage transatlantic's reputation among minority travelers, making the airline a less attractive acquisition target before Maya stepped in. Vista was planning a hostile takeover, Maya realized. They wanted to devalue us first by driving away diverse customers and creating service problems. Exactly, Elizabeth confirmed. And several of our former executives who were terminated after your takeover have mysteriously landed at Vista in senior positions. Maya handed the tablet back, a new determination in her eyes. Well, now we know where to look next. The conference room erupted in applause as Maya concluded her address to the new flight attendants. As they dispersed to their training stations, she took a moment to appreciate how far transatlantic had come. What had begun as a humiliating experience at 30,000 feet had transformed into a company-wide revolution that was changing the industry's approach to diversity and inclusion. Maya checked her watch. She had a board meeting in an hour to discuss transatlantic's potential acquisition of a smaller airline, one that would position them to compete directly with Vista on key routes. The information about Vista's underhanded tactics would be valuable in that discussion. As she gathered her materials, Maya reflected on the lesson that the crew of Flight 257 had learned the hard way. You never know who might be sitting in seat 2A. It could be just another passenger, or it could be someone with the power and determination to transform an entire industry. For Maya Chen, the journey that began with a denied meal had become a mission to ensure the skies truly belonged to everyone, and she was just getting started. Maya Chen's journey from victim to changemaker carries powerful lessons for us all. First, discrimination thrives in environments where accountability is absent. The flight crew's behavior wasn't just individual prejudice, but reflected a system designed to bury complaints and protect those who discriminated. True change requires exposing these systems and rebuilding with transparency at their core. Second, power often masks itself as procedure. When confronted, those in authority cited policies, security concerns, and proper channels, all attempts to maintain control while appearing objective. This administrative shield protected discriminatory behavior until someone with greater power challenged it directly. Third, courage looks different depending on your position. For everyday passengers facing discrimination, documenting incidents and speaking up despite intimidation requires tremendous bravery. For those with privilege like Richard Thornton, using that advantage to stand as witness and ally represents another form of courage. For someone with Maya's resources, leveraging power to create systemic change rather than merely seeking personal justice demonstrates leadership courage. Finally, discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's bad business. Transatlantic discovered that inclusive practices led to higher satisfaction scores and financial growth. Companies that allow biased treatment of customers don't just harm individuals, they damage their own long-term success. The most important lesson: change rarely comes from working within broken systems. Sometimes, you need the power to rewrite the rules. Maya didn't file a complaint or request sensitivity training. She acquired majority ownership and transformed the company from the top down. While not everyone can purchase an airline, we all have spheres of influence where we can demand and create meaningful change. Have you ever experienced or witnessed discrimination that made you wish you had the power to create instant accountability? Share your story in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in Maya's position? Would you have revealed your identity earlier or played the long game as she did? If you believe in the importance of creating more inclusive environments in business and beyond, hit that like button to help this story reach others who need to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about people who refuse to accept discrimination and instead transform the systems that enable it. Thank you for watching this story of courage, strategy, and transformation. Remember, you never know who might be sitting next to you or what power they might hold. Treat everyone with respect and dignity, not just because they might be a CEO in disguise, but because it's the right thing to do.